welcome to the Workshop Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, and joining me today, all the way from the other side of the world, probably about as far as you could possibly get from me, is Mr. Bryan Kush of Sawdust Bureau. Thank you for coming, Bryan.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Yeah,
I
I reckon it is
probably,
unless I was in Tasmania, I reckon that would be about the furthest I could possibly be away from you.
Is Tasmania on the north side of...
Further south, off the south coast, next up Antarctica.
Okay, I got it backwards in my head then. I always thought that Queensland's on the north, right?
Queensland's northeast. The hot tropical bit.
I always thought Tasmania was north of Queensland, but shows how good I am at world geography, I suppose.
At least you know where Australia is.
Well, I used to live in Los Angeles, right? And so I moved from northern Alberta to Los Angeles. So the next country over, basically, right? And I was surprised at how your people ask me, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm from Alberta. And the number of people in the U.S. that just have no idea of anything outside of their locale is just nothing. And I got tired of telling people that I was from Mexico or I was from Canada. Alberta is in Canada. I started telling them, it's in Mexico. Oh, really? It's like, yeah, it's next to Chihuahua. There's Chihuahua and Alberta. Anyway, so yeah, you're a day ahead of me too, I think, right?
I am.
Tuesday there?
Tuesday morning. Yep.
So you got any tips on anything I can bet on tonight?
Yeah, the fourth horse at Randwick, 10:55. Yeah, go for it.
That sounds good. And then the other question that I guess I have to ask as well, do the toilets really turn in the opposite direction? Because you're from Ireland, so you've been in the Northern Hemisphere and you've been in the Southern Hemisphere, so you can answer this question.
They do.
They really do.
Yeah, yeah. Water drains down the wrong way. I actually have got an anecdote for that. I was saying in the pre-show that I spent a year in Africa with my wife traveling around, and we crossed the equator in Kenya or Tanzania. Uganda. We crossed the equator, and my wife said, "Oh, we're just going to step over the other side, and the water will go down the other way." And I was like, "Absolute nonsense! This is like the gravity's like it's going to happen over many, many miles." And it was literally like you step one side of the line, it went one way, the other side went the other way. So yeah, I lost a bet.
Oh, really?
Very, very slowly, but you'll see. Like if you put a little twig on the water, it'll start to reverse direction. It's amazing.
Huh. I always thought that it would be just like the direction the jet is shooting the water into the bowl.
Well, this is draining from like a bucket. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure. Definitely down a plug hole, it definitely switches direction. So, yeah.
Interesting. There's your daily dose of science, I suppose. Well, there's something. So when were you in Africa, like traveling through Africa?
2010. Yeah. So we tried. The plan was to drive from Cape Town to Cairo, and then the Arab Spring kind of kicked off when we were in Kenya, Tanzania, up that way. So we just ended up we got so far, but we're like, well, we'll just do a different loop on the way down. So we just went through Rwanda and back down the other coast.
That's what I was going to ask about that, actually, because I seem to remember you talking about it at some point on your podcast there. I think you mentioned it, and yeah, that was a question that I had. It was like, I mean, as a North American, you're isolated from the rest of the world, really, and you have these pictures of like there's no way I'd get my wife to go to Africa at all. She's too terrified of getting murdered and mugged and everything like that. But yeah, did you have any like this is a sketchy experience?
We went night clubbing in Nairobi, which was probably about as sketchy as it got. But no, we had no problems. And like my parents had the same view. When I told them that we were going to go and try to drive across Africa, they thought we were crazy. And I'm like, hang on, you raised me in Belfast during the Troubles. Like I remember being taken to bomb damage sales as kids, and getting excited. You'd get a bargain. There's a bit of a shrapnel hole through a bit of clothing and it's like 80% off. So like, I don't know. I kind of rationalized it a bit and I'm like, there's good people everywhere, there's bad people everywhere, and most people want to help you. And we had so many people help us the whole way around. We were never robbed, we were never mugged, we were never threatened. It was a fantastic trip, really good.
Oh, that's good. Speaking of Belfast and the Troubles, I guess my nephew. I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I don't know if you're familiar with them at all.
Yep.
So they send missionaries everywhere in the world, right? And so my nephew got sent to Belfast, and he ran into a member there whose son got sent to Edmonton.
Right.
And so my nephew, his mom was all, going to Ireland, it's going to be so dangerous. He's going to get murdered for sure. And this Irish lady, she'd been looking at the news, and she'd found these news articles in Edmonton that there'd been a police shooting and there was gang shooting. And so she was all, oh no, he's going to get murdered.
Yeah. It was a colorful upbringing, but like once you're living in it, you really don't know any different, to be honest. Like most of my family, my aunties, uncles, cousins all lived in the south of Ireland. And, the stories that you would tell, or that I would tell my cousins, they just wouldn't believe. Like, and I'm like, well, it's just life. Like, yeah, it was a great place to grow up, but I don't think I could ever go back. Like, I love going back to visit, but I could never go back to live.
Well, yeah, I kind of have the same experience with my wife sometimes. Is like, we're the same age. We're like a couple months apart in age, right? And so you would think our experiences in life would be very similar since we're both from Canada. But she's from British Columbia and I'm from Alberta. And so I don't know politics in Australia, but it's like British Columbia is kind of as liberal as the country gets, and Alberta is as conservative as the country gets, right?
Yep.
And so we're having these conversations every once in a while, and she'll be like, oh, like when you get a bomb threat at school. Like, no. Like, I went to school for 12 years, and I never, ever once got sent home for a bomb threat. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, we had one every other month. We used to do bomb drills. Like, no, that never happened to me.
Yep. So yeah, that was my childhood. And then I came out to Australia post-university and settled here. And I've been here for nearly 20 years.
So what brought you to Australia from Ireland? I mean, you go from like the Emerald Isle that everybody idealizes as the perfect, beautiful green place to Australia, which is bloody hot and dry.
Yeah, so my mum is from New Zealand. So I'd spent quite a bit of time in New Zealand and around Australia, not so much in Melbourne. And then I took a gap year between school and university and just sort of drove around the outside of Australia, and fell in love with the place. Like I knew that once I finished university that I was going to come back. But then I did my Bachelor of Architecture in Glasgow, and I had to do a year in an office somewhere as part of it, and then you go back and do your master's. I started to do it in Belfast. I think I lasted 3 weeks. It was October in Belfast. It was dark by 3:30 in the afternoon, getting the train to work, and there were still bomb scares. So, you'd turn up to work at midday because all the trains were cancelled, and then you'd have to work those extra hours to make it up. And I'm like, yeah, maybe there's a better place for this. So I pretty much just booked a one-way flight to Melbourne and then started job hunting. The architecture scene here was always pretty good. And then found a job and met my wife, and the rest is history. I never really looked back. Like, we've always lived in Melbourne up until this year when we moved.
Yeah, my wife's doing her master's as well currently, and she had the choice. She got accepted at the University of Kansas in the U.S. and the University of Wollongong.
Of Wollongong, really? Right.
Yeah. And so there was this debate of like, Kansas is online. Wollongong is online, but could have done some in-person stuff as well. And so we're like, do we move to Australia? She's got friends in Melbourne and in Sydney, and they're always trying to convince her, oh, you should come here, you should come here. And yeah, what won out ultimately though is like spider season. I don't know if that's really a thing.
It's not really any season, spider season in Australia, but you kind of get used to it. Like my wife grew up in country Australia, and she does not cope with spiders. I am the chief spider relocator.
It's and the other thing is snakes. My wife is so deathly afraid of snakes. She's just like, you know, that was it's like, no, I just can't. The fact that there's snakes in Australia, like there's snakes here. Well, at least these ones won't kill me. Like, fair enough.
Like, I have lived here for 20 years, and except for going to far north Queensland, literally the jungles, or being on a golf course, I don't think I've seen a snake, you know?
Yeah. Well, her friends post on Facebook, and they'll be like, oh, look what I saw when I get home. There's got this like dinner plate sized spider sitting up in the corner of the house. And
yeah. Oh, we get those, but they keep the mosquitoes and flies in check, you know?
Yeah. I had this conversation with a friend I have that he's from Australia, and he kind of said the same thing as you, and it's like, oh no, it's not that bad. Besides, in Canada you have bears, and that's the flip side of that experience is like, yeah, I guess bears are dangerous, but it's what I'm used to, so it's not dangerous.
Yeah.
There was one time I walked out of our back door here, and walked out onto the deck, and I looked down, and there's a black bear coming out from underneath our deck, and so I just kind of looked at him and yelled at him, told him to go away, and he ran off into the trees and went back into the house.
Yeah, I worked a summer at university doing a summer camp in Pennsylvania, and yeah, my experience with bears there, give me spiders and snakes over bears every day of the week. Yeah.
Well, black bears aren't bad. I know they're just the bears that I'm legit scared of actually is grizzly bears. Like they're those are the scary bears, and unfortunately, thanks to our wonderful conservation services, grizzly bears in the area are on the rise. Yep. Like there's a grizzly at the other end of our property we see on the trail cams fairly frequently, and she has 3 cubs, and so that's one of those, like, I don't go anywhere by myself without bear spray for sure.
Yeah.
But and there's usually a gun in my vehicle.
Yeah. We had pepper spray across Africa. Unfortunately, we never had to use it. You have like lions coming around the camp at night, and you're like, do I use it, or is it going to make it worse? Like, just stay really quiet.
Yeah. Just get into the truck and shut the door. Anyway. Yeah. So, I mean, the reason I reached out to you and asked you to come on is you shared a post a couple days ago just about making a memorial box for somebody, and is that something you've done before, or is this kind of the first thing you've ever done?
I've probably done 4 or 5 of them before, mainly for adults. I had done one for a very close friend of mine who lost a baby in almost exactly the same way as these clients did. But yeah, is that still working? Oh, that's weird.
Yes.
Somebody rang me and it just interfered with my laptop, but that's all right. We're back. So yes, I'd done a few, mainly for adults. I had done one for a woman whose partner was a serviceman who had PTSD and ended up committing suicide, which was very, very hard, as I didn't really know the full story as well when she was commissioning me to do the box. So I do an inlay on the top of the box, which is a star map. You might have seen it, a few of my pieces. So it's a brass inlay.
Yeah, I've wanted
star
to
map.
rip you off on that several times.
Yeah, go for it. So yeah, it's a time, a date, and a place, and you can sort of geographically locate it. So yeah, I did one for her, and then she came to collect the box and broke down, and then eventually told me what the box was for. And then yeah, these clients, the husband had followed my work for years and was always saying, "Oh, I'm going to get you to make me a piece of furniture." And then he contacted me, saying that they had lost their baby girl at pretty much full term, and had a stillbirth. So yeah, it was pretty full on. And yeah, I said to my clients as well, listen, every experience is different, and I can't proclaim to know what you guys went through, because it was obviously very, very traumatic. But then I said, do you mind if I share my experiences of miscarriages and the struggle to actually have children? And they were delighted that I wanted to do it. So I put out a video, and the number of contacts that I had, even people that I knew, like I have a pretty open relationship with a lot of my close friends, and we do talk about things like that. But people that I had known for 15 years were reaching out saying, I just had my third miscarriage, and it's kind of the end of the journey for me. And, thank you for opening up. And like, it's great to be able to tell someone about it, because I don't know whether it's just our society or Western society or what, but yeah, it's just so heavily stigmatized still.
And that's our experience too. I commented as well on that post, and we didn't have any miscarriages, but we have 3 kids. So our oldest is 14, and then we have a 7-year-old. So there's 7, almost 8-year gap between them. And then we have a 3-year-old. So there's a decent gap between. But yeah, even just the stigma of not being able to have kids when you're trying to have kids is stressful. And like you said, I think you probably experienced this, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit. But your experience is your experience, and nobody else can say that. And so I can have some empathy for you and say, that must have been very difficult. But for me to say, oh, I know how you feel, that's bullcrap.
Yeah, it's the same as like losing something, like losing a parent or something like that. Like every circumstance is different. Your relationship with your parents might be different to somebody else's. So yeah, I just wanted to go and listen to them, really. So yeah, I went down, delivered the box to them, and we just sat and had tea for a couple of hours and just chatted. Yeah, it was really nice. It was emotional. Like I would say, at the time that we had our miscarriages, both were pretty early, and I would say that it probably didn't affect me as much as it should have. Like I was like, well, it wasn't to be, and we'll get on with it. And we'll keep trying. And we were lucky enough that we did get pregnant again both times fairly quickly. And then there were like complications with the births of both kids and stuff. And you just realize that it is like having children is really hard. And I think the statistic is 25% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage. I think that's what it is in Australia. Anyway.
Something like that. Somewhere between like 25-30%. A surprising number. You wouldn't think that it's that high, but yeah. Like our oldest, give you a little bit of the story. Our oldest, he was born at 30 weeks. And so this kind of leads into a bit of a story that I tell people every once in a while, and it's kind of a joke, but not at the same time. So he was born at 30 weeks, and I was going to school at the time, so we were down in the States, and our travel medical had just expired.
Oh God.
Yeah. And so he was in the NICU for a month. And fortunately we were in Oregon at the time, and Oregon at the time they had good Medicare, and he got enrolled into that automatically. And so we didn't end up having to pay the $250,000 bill. But
oh my God, are you?
Yeah. But we didn't know that was the case until like a day before we were about to take him home. And so we're going through this like, okay, I guess we put him in the car and we head back to Canada, and I go back to work in the oil field at this point, right? But anyway, so we take him out, and So I always say that's a personal crisis for us. And then our next kid, 8, almost 8 years later, we were living in BC at the time. And in 2017, I don't know if you saw it around there at all, but basically British Columbia was on fire.
Yeah.
Like there was 800,000 hectares on fire or something. And we were right in the center of that. Like we were, the first fire that started was literally about 1.5 kilometers from my office. And so, we were in the center of this. The hospital gets evacuated, the whole 9 yards. And my wife is, let's see, where was she at? I think she was like 32 or 33 weeks pregnant at that point. And so we're totally on knife edge because, like, oh, what if we have another early kid? And then we come back and after things kind of settle down a little bit, and then her first, between her first contraction and the time that the baby is born was 1 hour and 45 minutes. And so we drive into the local town, and the local hospital doesn't deliver babies. So we had to go to the city hospital, which is 1.5 hours away. And so we get to this hospital in town, and I get to the door, and the nurse, oh, you can't come in. You'll have to go to Williams Lake. This is like, I've had obstetrics courses, and I'm a first responder. I'm a firefighter, and I know that this baby is coming out before we get anywhere. I am not delivering a baby in my truck. She's coming into this hospital. We need to see a doctor. And the nurse, she's just like, she wouldn't let us in. And then the doctor happened to walk by and heard, and she's like, oh yeah, come in. We'll check you out and see. And then we'll make the call. Anyway, like half an hour later, here's this baby, right? And so this is a provincial crisis. And then our third kid, she's born in the middle of COVID. And so this is a world crisis. And so I'm talking to my wife here post this third kid, right? Like, we better not have any more kids, because if we have another kid, that's like Armageddon is happening if we have another kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, kids are an adventure, and unfortunately sometimes they're a tragedy too, which is really tough.
Yep.
But
yeah, it was through the other boxes that I'd made for adults that had passed. Like, it was a very, like, I love the experience of giving the clients something like furniture. Yeah, they'll value it, but it's still just a coffee table or something like that. But something that actually gives them some kind of closure and somewhere to put their memories in, and something to go back to and open up and sit down, because we don't have photo albums anymore because everyone just keeps photos on their phone. To actually have a physical thing that they can keep in the corner of a room and they don't have to open it, but when they feel like opening it, it's a physical decision that they're then going to sort of open up to some of those memories and things. So I've always enjoyed doing that. But the actual process of making this, I found really hard. I procrastinated over things. I wanted to get it absolutely perfect. And like most furniture makers, like, perfectionism it's a curse. So, and I'm like, this has to be perfect, So I spent
was it perfect, or did you
this.
make mistakes?
There's mistakes in every box. Like, there's mistakes in every piece of furniture, but they're things that nobody else would ever know about. But yeah, I would just end up undoing it and starting again. And yeah, whereas with furniture, I've never had to do that. I've like the mistakes. I'm like, right, okay, if I just patch that with this and grain match this, and they'll never notice. But yeah, with this box, like, yeah, it became all consuming. And through the process of being consumed by the box, I then started to think about the experiences of losing children. And, who would they have grown up to be? We weren't at a stage where we had names or anything like that, or we hadn't started buying things for a baby room. But yeah, it just makes you think. Yeah. Yeah. But then you think about the positives of it, like actually having had children, and you're like, well, if that child had made it, then I probably wouldn't have had this child and would be lacking that personality and that love and relationship in my life. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where, like, to the imperfection in the box or in the furniture or whatever. That's almost like part and parcel of the whole process, though, right? Is because those flaws. I mean, you're the only one that probably knows they're there as flaws, but they are, just like the person is it's unique. Because if you were to CNC cut out a box, yeah, sure, it might be perfect, but it wouldn't be unique and it wouldn't be created specifically for that situation either.
Yep. Yep.
Hmm.
And I hadn't actually shared this on Instagram. And usually I do, like, I'm pretty open about any mistakes or mishaps or anything like that. I do share them because I don't really use social media as a channel to find clients. I use it as a way of engaging with other furniture makers and hobbyists and things like that. So usually I will share the big errors and the big cock-ups and things that happen. The box actually broke on the way to deliver it. And the clients live about an hour and a half away from me. So delivery day came, and I'd been waiting on these lovely Brusso latches and things that had been arriving from America that got held up in customs. So there was constant delays on it, as well as my procrastination on it. And then delivery day comes. I get all excited to meet them. They're excited to get the box, and then I have to tell them that the box is broken. And it cracked two of the miters on the box. So I had to take the box home and basically break it apart and start again.
That sucks, but that almost adds to the story of it, though, too, right? And I think that's where, like, you can go online and you can order a remains box or memorial box for $150 or whatever, right? And I'm going to make a wild guess and say that you probably charge more than $150 for it.
Yeah.
But that's part and parcel of the whole memory, though. It is, yeah, I could buy something from IKEA, or I could have this thing that has this story and has meaning beyond just a box.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's as well part of the healing of their behalf is to be able to share their story with someone who's a stranger as well. It's not just, going to an online store, like you say, and just ordering something, but being able to talk openly about it is, part of the grieving process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you then. If you were given the opportunity to just say, suddenly you have however many clients you want, a sufficient number of clients to make a living doing these memorial boxes, would you do that?
No way. It's too emotionally taxing, like, genuinely. When the box broke, it's probably the first time that I can ever remember crying, physically crying. I don't think when we had both of our miscarriages, I don't think I had the response to cry as well, but there was something about the process that had gone into the box, their story, the box broke, and I just broke down. I'm like, so the idea of doing that, I mean, I know it's not going to be quite that circumstance for every box, but I found it took a lot out of me. But at the same point, it's something that I'd like to do a few times a year for different people. Like,
so if you could have like the once or twice a year sort of thing, that'd be okay. But
yeah, I don't think I can, because I'm not a therapist. Like, I don't like, I try to be open, and I try to be, like, especially on Instagram, I try to be open about mental health challenges and anxiety and imposter syndrome and all those kind of things, and tell people that it is a real thing. And you can have a bad day with your kids one day, or you could have 3 hours sleep and you come into the workshop and you don't want to work. Your creativity, I find, especially after having kids, my creativity levels just dropped, just absolutely plummeted. My creative time pre-kids was always in the evenings. Some people have told me, like, it's probably like a bit of ADHD in there or something, and it's like I like everything to be silent when I'm trying to be creative. The rest of the time I can work. I've got constant tinnitus from when I was a kid and had a fall, and my eardrums are absolutely ruined. So yeah, I have constant tinnitus. So I like to be around noise. Working in a quiet office is my idea of hell. But having music on or podcasts on or machinery on and that noise is fine. But when I'm being creative, it has to be pitch black at night. Everybody else is in bed, and that's when I find like ideas. And so when you bring kids along and you've had 3-4 hours sleep the night before, there's no motivation to actually sit down and try to be creative. So I find that most of my work post kids has been making pieces that I've designed in years gone by. Like I haven't made a piece of furniture for myself since making my son's crib. Oh, I made him a dresser as well, but this is like before he was born. So in 5 years, I haven't made myself a piece of furniture. I haven't self-commissioned a piece since then. I'm mainly making client work that they're buying my existing designs, which is great because I know I've got the cut lists, I've got the material lists, I know the costing of it, I know how long it's going to take me to make it. So it's probably a much better way to actually operate as a business. But I definitely feel like I want to reopen that creative side of me again, which is probably going to get easier now the kids are sleeping and they're getting a bit older. Like, yeah.
You don't have teenagers yet.
Yeah, I know, but my workshop's kind of far enough away from the house that I don't think I'll hear them screaming. So, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's actually something that I'm struggling with currently is my lack of a creative space for myself. Mm-hmm. Like I have, obviously I'm building a house and I do have a small shop set up now, but it's mostly just got everything stuffed into it because, you know, you have to have somewhere to put all your junk. And so I don't really have a creative space, but I recently bought myself a 3D printer, and that's been kind of like the background. Ooh, I have an idea. I can create something and send it to the 3D printer and Shazam, it appears. That's actually been a great kind of mental release for myself is that.
Yeah. It's a tough thing to do, like, especially because so many hobbyists and professional woodworkers, you're one man shop, you know, and you spend time head down in a workbench. And for me, like my training as an architect was always you design in groups. So as students, you would critique each other's work. It taught you to grow up. It taught you how to form creative ideas quickly. It wasn't necessarily like, I think way too many people design furniture by looking up dining table in Google or Pinterest or something like that. And I think it's very, very limiting. I think it stops you creating your own aesthetic. So it's something that I'm looking to do with this new workshop that I'm building, is to actually run design classes, not teach woodworking, which I've taught before and enjoyed it, but I don't want to spend my life teaching people how to cut dovetails because I don't like cutting dovetails. Like, I've got to be one of the only furniture makers who does not like cutting hand-cut dovetails, and I find that my clients don't really care about it enough. So I think it's something you've got to be really motivated about, whereas to me, it's about the big idea and how you translate a design into a sketch or a 3D model, and then how that becomes a real piece of furniture. So yeah, I'm looking at running design classes and getting small groups in and trying to offer that university teaching experience where, you know, you have to get up, you have to present your work, you have to present your ideas in front of a panel of people that are your peers, and you critique each other. Because social media, for me, is either a glorious echo chamber of everybody telling you that your work is good, or a very, very nasty side telling you it's the exact opposite. And I don't necessarily think that either are particularly healthy. Like, I think critique is fine, so long as it's got an outcome to it, you know, not like this is rubbish, but it's like, you know, see if you just approach that a bit differently and, you know, added a few more repetitive elements in there or change the proportion of it to this. Like, and I think when you get buried in your own work, in your own space, and you get into your own head, you can struggle to make those connections, but actually having a physical person next to you suggesting that, some really quick 3D models. So yeah, I'm excited to get those running. Hopefully start of next year is the plan. Bring people up to the property and sort of make a real day of it and experience of it. It's not something that's taught online. It's something that, yeah, you have to make physical models.
That would be really cool actually to experience. Like, that's something that I'm not I'm not aware. I mean, I guess you can go to. Yeah, I'm not aware of any actually like weekend or even week long programs that I'm aware of that even do that. Like there's
Yeah,
all sorts of come build a chair, and here's the chair that we going to build through there, but not a
yeah.
whole lot of
They have a. I mean, they have
let's
a place. Like I'm sure you're aware. Byrne Chandley,
yep.
Melbourne's legendary chair maker. Like his classes are just wonderful, and like the experience of it, you never hear a bad thing. Like Byrne is just such a top bloke, but you never hear a bad thing about the class. It wasn't really what I was imagining. Like everybody leaves it having had a great time, learned lots of new skills. Whereas I don't know, I find that a lot of the furniture it's changed since I self-taught myself most of my furniture making, because now there are so many more resources. Like when I was learning, it was books, whereas now you can learn most things on YouTube or Instagram so long as you learn how to do it safely.
Yeah.
Whereas I think design thinking, you still have to have some level of being taught it by somebody rather than it being a video that you're playing. I think
Yeah.
personally.
Well,
And the
I
people that
find that
say,
there's
I just wanted to make that record console because I don't have a creative bone in my body. I do not buy that there are non-creative people in the world. I don't
I
believe it. I think
agree
you
with
can
you.
teach creativity.
I totally agree. Um, I find that there's two groups of people though. There's people who want to learn how to be creative, and there's people who just want to learn how to do the thing,
Hmm.
right? Like I have a I my I got a jointer off of a guy, right? It was a nice 8-inch jointer, and I got it for dirt cheap because it wasn't working right. The guy, he'd put the knives in. It was a straight head cutter. Put the knives in, and he didn't tighten them down appropriately, and so it threw a knife, and it bent the outfeed, the little lip that comes out over the cutter block. It bent that just a tiny little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd be like, oh, I can't figure it out, and I'm afraid of it now, and blah blah blah. And he's the type of woodworker that he just wants a plan, and he wants to follow the plan, make the thing, but he doesn't have the problem solving or the creative ability to fix things, right, or to come up with it on his own. And not that he can't be taught that, but he just doesn't want to learn it. And so I got this jointer off of him, and I stared at it for a while, and then I get my dial indicator out, and I figure out where the high spots are, and sanded it down, cleaned it up, and flattened the tables out, and it works perfectly. But I think it's because I'm that other end of the spectrum, kind of like I'm assuming you are. Then that the design or the problem solving aspect of it is more interesting than the product itself.
Yep, absolutely. But I've encountered people like the person you're describing, and I've taught them at an institution in Melbourne, and the first project, they've taken straight out of Wood Review or American Woodworker or something like that. And the second project that they've done, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to help you how to make that. You can take it as like a start point for the idea, but change it, like change the proportions, change the legs, change the drawer fronts, make something, and pushing them into it. Like it sounds harsh, but I think it's the only way you actually really learn self-development. Like, because I don't know, learning to make something out of a magazine, you're learning woodworking skills out of it, but I don't think you're really learning that full problem solving life skills where at the end of the day you can sit, look at yourself in the mirror and go, I nailed it today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the goals that I have once I'm done my master's and build my shop, is to actually to use those exact principles of learning how to do said skill and apply that to your life, right? Like, because there is, like, when it comes to mental health in particular, it's really hard to talk to people about, you run into a friend at the grocery store and, hey, how you doing? You don't say, well, today I was considering shooting myself this morning, but I'm okay now. You don't,
Mm-hmm.
nobody does that. But,
Mm.
but the difference of, in the shop, you're able to open up to people that you're working with, or side by side, you can have those conversations easier.
Yep.
And
So, it's one of the things that I love about social media, is the networks of people that you build. Like, and maybe it talks to the nature of the type of people that are drawn to something like furniture making. But in architecture, people always spoke about, architects always spoke about being collaborative and sharing ideas and stuff. And I still saw so many personalities in it that I didn't really like. Um, Whereas in furniture making, I have literally encountered none of those people. And people are open about sharing ideas. People are very, very open about talking about business struggles and things. Like, we talk about it on our podcast quite a bit. We're open about, the finances of it, the struggles with parenting, with life, all those kind of things that in other design industries, I don't see it happening. I just don't. And maybe it is the fact that, like, if there are mistakes made in something like architecture, it becomes a legal problem. You're talking about involving builders and lawyers and all that kind of stuff. Whereas a mistake in furniture making is something that we have to own and we have to deal with. So it does build quite resilient people, I think. Like I said, with that box that was broken, I had my breakdown and I'm like, right, I've got to go and fix this box for these people. Like, I got to do it. Yeah, I do.
yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, there aren't very many industries that I'm familiar with either that have the same level of openness and like, ask you, for example, something that I would like to ask you and I haven't yet. How do you do your star map thing? Like, how do you map that? Is there like a website or something that you can go to and just
Yeah,
say
yeah,
this is where
yeah.
the
Yep. There's a couple of online websites. You put in the GPS coordinates, the time, and you basically print out a PDF, and then I have a CAD file that has all the brass sizings.
huh.
Thankfully, imperial brass sizings. Thank you, America. Um, it's probably like talking the imperial metric thing. That's probably the only time that it comes into an Australian workshop is diameters of brass, router bits, and blade widths is the only time imperial measurements come in here, and we have to jump between the two. But yeah, I've got the CAD file of all the different brass sizings, and then I cut it using my shaper.
You know what the stupid thing is? Now that we're on to the stupid thing about you're getting these US sizes or the imperial size stuff, and like 3/4 inch plywood here is
Yep.
18 mil plywood.
Yep.
So, like,
Yeah.
you're not actually, it's actually, 3/4 is 23/32, which is 18 millimeters.
Yep.
Like, just
Yeah.
not only that, but the imperial system is now defined by the metric system. Like
Somebody was
like an inch is defined as by metric measurements. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember talking to Jimmy DiResta about that and a tape that he used to measure things that was neither it was some form of imperial, but it was like metric imperial, and my mind was like, what? What are you talking about? But,
yeah, like, you can get a machinist rules and stuff. They're all like a base 10 imperial measurement, which is
that's
stupid.
what it
And
was.
so you
Yep.
have tenths of an inch. It's like, just
Yep.
I'm probably going to offend a bunch of listeners on this one because I know there's a bunch of US listeners, but just switch to the metric system because it's dumb. The imperial system is dumb, but
Yep.
I don't know. I guess if you want to measure something that was originally defined by the king's penis, I could go ahead, right?
Yeah, exactly. Dear. But yeah, in general, life is pretty good. Like, everything's good, and when it's not, like, you just work to get through it. Like, again, something moving rural. I think I've taken a lot of the problem solving that I learned in furniture, and I'm now applying it to life here. You know, we have storms, big trees come down. You know, somebody's got to fell the tree and cut it up, and you know, there's floods, there's snakes, there's spiders, there's all those kind of things that, yeah. If I lived in a city and go ahead.
Are you going to fall into the trap of, now that you have 8 acres, you're going to have a garden, and then you're going to have chickens, and then you're going to start Sawdust Bureau Homestead channel? And
don't know whether it's going to be a channel. Like, I watch some woodworkers on YouTube, but my ability to sit down, to find the time to sit down to edit videos, it's just gone. It's just gone from my life. But yes, the chicken coop is right there. It's literally just there. No chickens in it yet, but we were fortunate that most of the stuff here is pretty established. Like, it's nice gardens. There's a dam ready to have some yabbies put in it, which are like freshwater crayfish. So I'm going to stock up with those. But yeah, it's a place that I want to share with people, with friends and family. And yeah, they get out of the city, they can have a weekend in the country. And the same thing with the woodworking classes. It's somewhere where I want to bring people to, because it is so close to the city. But we wake up to kangaroos every morning. There's koalas in the trees. There's amazing bird life. Like, I still have to pinch myself that I live here. Like, it's the first time where I've really felt as though I live in Australia.
So your wife is still commuting into Melbourne then to work, or is she going to move to?
She got made redundant 2 weeks ago, so she is now looking at a job in Ballarat, in the city sort of next to us, which I think it would be a good thing. Like, her work wasn't. It was pretty toxic, and some nasty people in there making life very, very difficult for mums in general, which is pretty shitty behavior. But yeah, I think it would be nice. The commute wasn't that bad, and it's like public transport here is pretty cheap, so it's an hour and a half on the train, and it's $10, so about $7 a day. So that side of it, and she could work on the train, but it was just being away from the kids, like missing breakfasts and dinners and things like that. Yeah.
She's not looking for like remote work so she can do from home at all, or she can't put up with you enough, so she got to get out of the house every once in a while?
I think there's a bit of that, but she's a real people person as well. Like, she likes being around other people, as do I, which is weird because I've worked solo for so many years. But I find that, like, I have massive FOMO about being at social things. Like, I'll go to everything that I can. I'll go to gallery launches and try to. I've got a pretty diverse few groups of friends and things. So I think she would like if she could find work here where she actually has a network of people that she can get to know. That would be ideal. So yeah, there's a few irons in the fire, and hopefully she gets something soon.
Yeah. Well, we should probably wrap up. It's been a bit here. I'm enjoying talking to you, and thank you for sharing everything and sharing your sage wisdom and all that.
Yeah, I don't know how much wisdom was shared, but yeah, it's always good to talk about life experiences, I reckon.
Why don't you tell everybody where you can be found, and mentioned your podcast a couple times. I've actually been listening to the Shop Stool podcast for longer than you've been on it.
Really? You're one of the OGs, right?
I think I started, to be honest, I think I started listening to episode 1.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not sure. It was what's his name now? Jordan, right?
Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so I followed him on YouTube originally, and then when the podcast started, I think that was actually one of the first podcasts I even started listening to.
Right. Yeah, I think Jordan stepped away in like 2018 or something. 2018, 2019, and then they asked me, and I was like, sure, sounds good. So yeah, the Shop Stool podcast, and we try to. It's fairly Aussie Kiwi centric, but we try to get on a few international guests and just talk about their experiences of business and life. You know, similar to what we're doing now, the struggles, the challenges, the highlights. And it's a fortnightly show now. We're just about to wrap up the 6th season of the show in a couple of weeks' time. But there's a pretty good back catalogue there of different makers of different levels and things. And Sawdust Bureau on Instagram. I'm not going to spell bureau because I have to spell it to every single Australian, but I reckon your listeners might be able to work it out. So Sawdust Bureau on Instagram and sawdustbureau.com is the website.
Bureau, I am pretty good at spelling. Like I'm pretty good. But bureau is like one of a half a dozen words that I absolutely struggle to spell. Like I have to like, does it start with an E? Does it start with a U? Is there an AU? What's just every time?
Yeah, it was thinking back to, I actually found my sketchbook when I first started woodworking, and I had all the list, like a page and a half of business names, and Sawdust Bureau circled on it. I just kind of liked, like, I wanted to be part design office, part makey, so it was like, yeah, sawdust in a bureau, Sawdust Bureau.
Makes sense.
But yeah, you can DM me there, and we have the Shop Stool podcast Instagram as well for questions and things for the shows. But yes.
Yep, and that's I always enjoy listening to your show because it's Aussie, New Zealand, that part of the world. The people on your podcast don't show up into my social media at all, right?
Yep.
And so I always like listening to you guys because I'm like, oh, like Nick Padula, you had him on, and that's when I started following him, and like he's hands down like my favorite person on social media in general. Like he's fantastic design
he is a
sense
top guy.
and fantastic video skills. Like he's like, in my opinion, probably the best person on YouTube currently as far as woodworking goes.
Yep, I wouldn't disagree. No, we've got a pretty good range of talent here in Australia, and like not many of them are on YouTube, so they're just hidden behind an Instagram algorithm waiting to be discovered. So it's nice for them to share their stories and for us to share their work to the wider world.
Yeah. And in the post show here, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about the design scene and the woodworking scene in Australia. And so with that, and as that is the hook for people to go to sign up on Patreon, let's head over to the after show. And now for something completely different. A workshop therapy thank you for our founding father patrons. First up, we have Matthew from Argiano Serio, whose craftsmanship is so impeccable it has been declared illegal in 17 countries. But that's beside the point. Rumor has it he once made a chair so comfortable it was promptly elected to Parliament. Next, Brad of Brad's Customs, a man who single-handedly reinvented the wheel. No, seriously, we've seen it. It is a bit square, but that's very modern. He's also mastered the ancient art of turning scrap wood into small, ceremonial hedgehog homes. Bravo, Brad. Now, Keith from Blackthorn Concepts, the only maker who can say flux capacitor in 7 different languages. He's been known to fashion furniture out of pure logic, and once built an entire dining table out of existential dread. Some say it wobbles a bit, but don't we all? Now, Eric of Overall Makerworks, a man who can fix anything. Except, of course, his own sandwiches. But never mind. His creations are smoother than a penguin on roller skates, and about as predictable, too. He's a lovely chap. Brandon of Tectonic Creations, he redefined earth-shattering design literally several times. We had to call in a bloody structural engineer. But rest assured, he's never met a tectonic plate he couldn't shake or mess up a little bit. But last, but not least, the Grant Alexander. Not a Grant Alexander, the Grant Alexander. He is so good. He once built an entire time machine out of popsicle sticks and duct tape. But alas, the machine is stuck in 1973. No matter, he's still here with us in spirit. Sometimes in his bell bottoms. But wait, there's more. You too can join this glorious, slightly ridiculous band of makers by becoming a patron supporter of the Workshop Therapy. for just a few pounds, euros, groats, dollars, or whatever currency you have stuffed under the mattress, you'll get exclusive access to behind-the-scenes chaos, tips, tricks, and general tomfoolery. It's just like a membership to a very exclusive club, only without the strange initiation rituals. Or maybe not. So don't wait. Come along. Now, once again, for something completely different, we need to thank a special thank you to an individual who's not a member of the Founding Fathers, but we're going to thank once again anyway for being a member and a supporter of the Workshop Therapy Podcast, and that is Carol Ann Joannette Racine. Carol Ann is no ordinary human being. Oh, no, far from it. She is a maker of magnificent things, a sorcerer of sawdust, and quite possibly a wizard or a lumberjack. We are not entirely sure. Carol Ann once built a birdhouse so delightful that birds lined up, yes, lined up to move in. Rumor has it, even a penguin wanted in, but alas, penguins can't fly. That ended up as a bit of a disaster. Her skills are so refined that she's been spotted turning regular old wood into pure gold. That might be an exaggeration, but we'd believe it if she said so. In any case, we salute her brilliance, her boundless creativity, and her ability to fix, create, and inspire. Carol Ann Joannette Racine, we thank you. Your support is legendary, your spirit unstoppable, and so here's to you, O maker of wonders, with tools in hand and mischief afoot.